Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of 2D prototyping in Unity. My name is Kasanas. In the last episode we took care of the code that allowed us to shoot off our rocket. And in this episode I'd like to finish off the projectile. I'd like to finish it off by having it hit something and explode. And that's really how we're going to end it until we've got ourselves enemies to fight. Alright everybody, so let's get started. Okay guys, there are a number of things that we need to do in order to have this rocket finished off. Alright, the first thing we want to do is we want to create a particle system for the explosion when the rocket hits something that it can hit. Alright, and to do so we're going to use this sprite sheet right here. We're going to invent a new particle system and we're going to make it into a prefab. Okay, it's going to be right here, and then whenever our rocket hits something, we're going to instantiate the prefab exactly the same way we instantiated the projectile. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create ourselves a new material. So we're going to go to our materials, we're going to say create, and we are going to say material. Let's name this material to rocket explosion material. Alright, great. We are going to change the albedo. I think that's how you say it, albedo. I'm not sure, to be honest. Albedo, and we are going to give it the particle explosion. Perfect. And we are going to change it, because right now it's not using the alpha, to cutout. Alright, perfect. That's the same way we did the smoke. Alright. The next thing I want to do is I want to create ourselves a new, let's go back to our prefabs right here. I want to create a new particle system that we're going to use, that we're actually going to use here. So, create, and we're going to go down to particle system. Now, the first time we went through particles, we went through very, very quickly. I understand that, guys. I understand that. Don't worry. We're going to go through right now a little bit slower this time. All right. Let's go through right away. We're using our default materials again, and I don't want to. I want to go through and change it to use our explosion we just created. So I'm going to go into renderer. I'm going to click on this little circle right here, and I'm going to choose rocket explosion. Okay. Now, this is what it looked like last time as well. We are not actually using the sprite, let's take a look at it, as a texture animation sheet. Right now, we're just using it as a single object, and we don't want to do that. We want this 1, 2, 3, 4 to be the sequence that these particles are played in. Okay? So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go over to texture sheet animation, and we're going to change it. We're going to use it, turn it on, and we are going to say it's a 2 by 2. So we're going to change this number to 2 by 2. And we're going to see now that we're only seeing the initial star. That's all we're actually seeing up here right now. And that's good. That's what we want to see. Up higher, because of the lifetime of this thing, it's actually playing as a sequence. So let's go in right now and change the lifetime to 1 so you can see it. All right. There we go. We can actually see these particles now are changing over time. Exactly the same way the smoke was. All right. Perfect. We don't want this thing to loop. We're going to leave it to loop for now, but we don't want it to loop. We're going to change that in a minute, though. The duration of 5 is fine. That's the lifetime of the change. That's fine. Start speed. I want this thing. I don't want any start speed. When the explosion hits, I want it to occur at the location the rocket actually hits. So I'm going to change the start speed to 0, and I'm not going to actually add any speed to that. We could add a little tiny bit, you know, one direction or the other if we want to, and we can take a look at that later on, or you guys can decide later on exactly how you want it to work. All right. Start rotation's fine. Start color is fine. I'm going to change. All of this is fine for now. All right. We're going to change a couple of things here. First of all, we're going to change the emission. I don't want it to be. I want it to be only 1. Okay, and we can see that that's occurring properly. And let's change the shape right now too. The shape, we're going to change our radius again, it's a cone, to decimal 1. All right? So right now we've got a star that's occurring in relatively the same location. And I don't want to do this, actually. What we're going to use instead of this rate, well, you know what? Let me show you why. Let me just leave it like this for now. All right. With all this in place, I don't like the start size, so let's change the start size to 2. So it's a little bit bigger explosion. All right? That's our rocket explosion, a little bigger. You guys can play with these numbers here to kind of get the explosion you like. Anyway, I think the rest of this is pretty much fine for now. Let's just change color over lifetime. I always like to add a fade. I always like to affect the alpha over lifetime so it kind of fades to nothing. All right, so I'm going to add this. The top one is the alpha. I turn it to 0. So over the lifetime of this particle, it starts off fully opaque and then goes to transparent as we move along. Boop. Perfect. And that's going to be our explosion. Now, we don't want it to loop, first of all. We only want it to play once. And I want you to see something that happens the way this works. And we're going to change this in a second. If I hit stop here, and let's change this to a duration of 1, because we only want it to play once. Watch what happens. There's a slight delay. There's a slight delay, and we never see the particle explode. All right, we can fix that right now. We're going to fix that right now. You could either change the duration to 2. If I do, watch what happens. If I say play, we're going to see the explosion occur. It came in very late and was a little bit slow. That's not what we want to do, though. What we want to do instead is we want to go down to our emission. And we're going to change our emission instead of our emissions from 1, a rate of 1, to a rate of 0. But we're going to add a burst. Okay, there's going to be a burst effect at time 0. And you can put in any number you want there. I'm going to put in 1, so it's only going to play one little explosion. But watch what happens now. Play. Boom. It's right there right away. As soon as it comes on, it explodes once. At time 0, the particle's already running. All right? That's perfect. That's the particle system I want. Okay? You guys can go and tweak it and give it some twirling, make it look prettier. I'm just going through this very quickly so you guys can really see it. All right? You can add a little bit of force to it so that the particles are moving in one direction or another depending on how the rocket hit. You guys can do all that kind of stuff if you want to. All it really is going through and playing with this stuff here. That's all it is. All right? And there's a lot of information here. This can be made extremely, extremely powerful. Okay. Let's give our particle system a name, first of all, before we add our rest of our components. Let's call this rocket explosion PS. All right. One last thing we want to do here. If I hit play again, actually, you know what? I'm going to turn that off. If I turn off maximize on play. If we hit play again right here, we can see that rocket explosion PS plays once and then just sits there. And that's not what we want. We want this thing to be destroyed. So we are going to go through and add in a new component. Add component. Bloop. A script that's pre-existing. We're going to add in our destroy me. Okay, and we're going to give it a time of 1 second. It doesn't really matter. All right, now when we play, bam, our explosion plays once and then it's destroyed. Okay, so that is perfect. That is done. I'm going to go over here to my prefab folder and I'm going to drag my rocket explosion in. Like I said, it might not be exactly what we're looking for, but we can make and tweak it as we go ahead. For now, it's good enough. Now that I've got myself a prefab here, I'm going to dump it. I no longer need it there. It exists on my computer, and I can use it whenever I need to. All right? The next thing I want to do is create an object for this thing to hit. It's just going to be a temporary object, so I'm just going to grab any sprite. I'll just grab this heart, and I'll put it right there. That's perfect. I just want to be able to shoot it. All right? So that's going to be my heart right there. What I want to do is I want to add into this a physics 2D and a circle collider. We'll just leave it like that for now. It's just a temporary blocker. And remember, guys, we're adding this collider because in order for these 2D objects to affect each other, they each have to have a collider. All right? The colliders will bump into each other or something to that effect. They bump each other or move through each other, etc., depending on how you have it set up. If we take a look at our prefab and we remember correctly, our rocket had a number of different colliders. The first, well, not on this one. On this one, it had this box collider. Let's take a look at it. I'll drag it up here so we can see it. Bam. Missile. The missile itself had a box collider on it. All right, right here. And we set it up as a trigger. Now this trigger is going to allow us, like I said when I first created it, it's going to allow us to understand when a trigger is basically a collider that allows things to pass through it. So when this collider, this 2D collider right here, touches another collider, it's going to allow a signal. It's going to say, okay, we've contacted another collider. When those colliders are passing through each other, it's saying, okay, hey, we're touching. And then as the collider exits, this 2D trigger right here, it says, oh, that other collider exited out of me. So I have 3 opportunities to be able to initiate some kind of code response to the touching or the collision of those 2 colliders. All right. What we want to do, I'm going to dump this guy because we don't need him right now. Boop. What we want to do is we actually want to add a new script in order to react to the collision between these 2 objects. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say add component, and I'm going to say new script. And let's call this new script, how about rocket hit. All right? Rocket hit. So every time our rocket hits something, we're going to actually go into this. That's our plan. So this is going to take care of any collisions that occur. So let's double click. Mono develop opens up. Great. And, oh, why does it keep doing that? Let's do this again. There. Okay, perfect. All right, so rocket hit. Now, there's a number of things that we want to know about our rocket. First of all, how much damage does it do? So let's add in here a public, a float, and let's call this weapon damage. We're not going to use this number right now. It doesn't really matter what it is right now. But later on, when we actually have enemies, we're going to want to actually do damage to those enemies. So each rocket is going to do this much damage. That's what this variable is for. The second thing I want to know, I'm going to have to make some changes because the rocket hit script is located on the missile. Okay, it's located on the missile here. However, on our projectile is where our rigid body is located, and also where our projectile controller is. What we want to happen when our missile hits something and the collider detects a collision, we want to say to the projectile, hey, stop moving. All right. So to do that, we're going to have to turn off our velocity, whatever velocity we have on our rigid body. All right, and we're going to do that in this script right here. So let's, first of all, make a call. Let's actually make a reference to that projectile script. So projectile, what did I call it? Projectile controller, right? Controller, yeah, perfect. And let's call it my PC. Who cares what we call it? All right, so this is going to be a reference to the projectile controller on the parent object. All right, that's where it's actually located. And the last thing I want to do is I want to add in here a public game object. And this public game object is going to be our explosion effect, all right? So let's actually just call it that, explosion effect. All right, and this is going to be a reference to our particles we just created. So we're going to create these particles whenever we hit something. Okay, great. Let's go on awake. Awake. And on the awake, what I want to do is, the first thing I want to do is find our projectile controller. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my PC, which is the reference I've already created above, and I'm going to get component in parent, not components, get component in parent. Now the reason why I use this one is because we are looking in a child. We're actually calling this from the child, and we want to actually find the script that we included on the parent. So I'm using get component in parent. All right, it's going to the parent, the one layer above, and it's going to try and find the projectile controller, which I have to add in here. Projectile controller. Boom, boom, boom. Just like that. That's all we really need to do. Once we've got that, we can actually access the projectile controller from this location. We can access any public scripts from this location here. All right, perfect. Now, we're going to need a couple of new things. The first thing we're going to need is we're going to need to find out when the colliders touch each other. All right, so when are these colliders actually coming together? And what we're going to do is we're going to use an existing function. All right, and it's void on trigger enter 2D. Now the on trigger enter 2D will take in one argument, and that is a collider 2D. Boom. And let's just call it other, because that's pretty standard. So what this basically is going to do is it's going to be whenever the collider located on our missile collides with another collider, or has a collision with another collider, that other collider will show up here, and it'll give us information about it. All right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check if. How do we know, first of all, if we can shoot something? I don't want them to be able to shoot everything. Let's go back to our game for a minute. I don't want them to be able to shoot everything. I don't want them to be able to shoot this rocket ship, for example. I only want them to be able to shoot enemies or obstacles or something that I want to be destroyed. All right, so what we can do a number of different things. We can use, let's take a look at this heart right here. We can either use a tag and say, this is an enemy, and if it's an enemy, therefore we are able to shoot it. But we don't necessarily want to shoot all enemies. We don't want to necessarily shoot everything. Maybe some things we don't want to affect. All right, so instead of actually making this tag enemy, I'm going to put this back to untagged. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my layer, and I'm going to create a brand new layer. All right, and I'm going to go down here to my user layer number 9, and I'm going to add in my name. And I'm going to say this layer is Shootable. All right, boom. Anything on the shootable layer is going to be shootable. That's how we're planning on doing it. All right, so anything that's located on that layer, I can shoot. So I don't want to be able to shoot the rocket. It's going to remain on the default layer. I don't want to be able to shoot any of this stuff here. It's going to remain on the default layer. That means that our projectile is going to simply pass through anything that's not on the shootable layer. All right, that's how we're going to start it off. So let's go back to our script now that I've done that, and I'm going to say if our object, so our other dot game object, because that's what we're taking a look at, the game object itself, and then we want to know the layer. So the layer that the other collider's game object is on equals, and then we're going to use, that's going to be a layer mask. We're going to use our layer mask dot name to layer. The name to layer function, I can put in a number there. If I go back to my game here, the shootable layer was actually layer 9. If I wanted to, I could simply write in here layer 9, and that would work. But rather than do so, I gave it a very specific name. I called it Shootable, and that way, regardless of where it is, if I have to move it for some reason or something later on, I don't have to change my code. All right, so I'm going to say Shootable. So what this is going to do, it's going to say, oh, I don't want that there. What it's going to say is if the other layer object is equal to our shootable layer, so if this layer is equal to the shootable layer, then I want something to happen. What do I want to happen? Let's take a look. The first thing I want to happen is I want the rocket to stop. All right, so I'm going to have some way of stopping this rocket, and right now we don't have that, but I do have access to the projectile controller of the rocket itself. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to add into the projectile controller script right here. I'm going to add in a new function. I'm going to add in a new function. All right, and I'm going to call it, let's see, let's call it RemoveForce. So let's call it a public void, and I think that for all public functions, I think the return type has to be void, but I'm not positive about that. I'll have to take a look. And let's call it RemoveForce. And basically what I want to happen, it's not going to take any arguments. What I want to happen is if this is called, I want this object to stop completely. All right? I've already added to the rigid body a force, and I have to change the velocity of this rigid body, because the force has added a velocity to the rigid body. I have to change the force of the rigid body immediately to 0. All right, so I've already got a reference to it right here, my RB. So my RB dot, and I'm going to affect the velocity directly. The velocity is going to be turned to 0 right away, is equal to, and the velocity is a 2D vector, just like it was before, a new vector, 2, and it's going to be zeros. So this is basically calling this thing here, calling this function, is going to remove all forces off of my rigid body and immediately set the velocity to 0. It's going to stop moving. All right, great. That's step 1. So I've got the new one in there. Let's go back to rocket hit. So what I want to do in rocket hit is I want to actually make a call to that public function I just created. Now, I've got my projectile controller up here, so I can say my PC, all right, I've already got it there, dot RemoveForce. RemoveForce. There it is. All right, it takes no arguments. Now, by using this, like this, I am calling the rigid body on the other one, and I'm saying, stop moving, please, right away. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to instantiate my explosion. And we've already seen how to instantiate things before. We're going to use the instantiate function. And I'm going to instantiate, what am I going to instantiate? I'm going to instantiate my explosion effect. So explosion effect. Where am I going to instantiate it? I'm going to instantiate it where my current object is. So transform dot position. Transform. Nope, not that transform. I want little t. Little t trans. I hate it when it does that. Little t transform dot position. All right, so that's basically going to take the x, y, and z coordinates of the current existing transform, the transform that I'm attached to, and it's going to instantiate the object there. Now, the last thing I'm going to put in is the rotation of this object, and I'm gonna do it the same. Transform. So with a small t, please. Why are you not giving me the option to do small t? Transform dot. Don't switch it over. You make me so mad. Sometimes this thing makes me so mad. Transform dot rotation. All right, and the transform dot rotation is going to be the same rotation as the missile itself. All right, so it's going to instantiate this guy right here. All right, and the last thing I want to do inside here, so let me put my semicolon. The last thing I want to do right now is I want to destroy this game object. All right, I want to actually destroy this one, not the entire thing. I don't want to destroy the parent, only the missile itself. I want to destroy the actual image, so we're no longer seeing it. So destroy, and I want to destroy the game object. All right, this is, by doing it this way, by destroying this game object rather than the parent game object, I am leaving, let's take a look at our hierarchy again, of our missile. I'm destroying the missile, but I'm leaving the projectile. And that's what I want to do, because that is going to leave the smoke in place as well. And we've already got it set up so that after, when destroy me kicks in, the projectile is going to be destroyed anyway. All right, so that is what I think we want to do. I'm going to add in a safeguard. One last thing. I'm going to add in a safeguard. I used on trigger enter 2D. I'm going to add in a safeguard just to make sure that everything works out all right. Just in case we've got ourselves an issue here, I'm going to add in. Where is it? Right here. Let me take this out. Later on, we're going to add in damage in here, and we're not going to do so right now, but later on, we're going to damage some enemies. We're going to add in a safeguard here. We're going to add in void on trigger. I wish this would finish. Makes me sad that it won't for me. I'm so lazy. On trigger stay 2D. So we're going to do this as well, just in case our rocket is moving fast enough that we can't actually find that initial contact. All right. So just in case we can't find that initial contact, if it's staying within it, then we're going to do the same thing. So it takes in the same argument. It's collider 2D. Collider 2D. We'll call it other, and we'll do it exactly. We're just going to cut and paste this exact same thing. If it's equal to that, then do this. All right. Copy and paste it right here. Paste. All right, and we will end this just like that. In doing so, once again, all we're doing is making sure that if it's going too fast, we can actually still catch it. All right, and I'm going to save this. File, save. Now, I think that's all we should have to do. All right, let's make sure. Oh, I've got myself a thing here. Projectile controller does not contain a definition of remove force. I did not save it yet, did I? Let's make sure. Projectile controller, remove force, file, save. All right, now let's make sure it's working. All right, our console says everything looks good. Let's see what happens when I say play. Oops, I have to click down here. All right, so first thing that happens, the rocket didn't destroy. So something went wrong there. I'm not exactly sure what. The force was removed, but the object itself wasn't destroyed. Oh, I know why, because we didn't actually launch our appropriate things. So let's go back here to our project. Let's make sure we've got everything in here. Our damage is 0. Our explosion game object is going to be this prefab right here. All right, there we go. Now we've got ourselves an explosion prefab. Let's give it a try again. Boom, there we go. That's what we wanted to see. All right, another fire, boom. So basically I had an error there where I didn't have all of the variables filled in, and it was saying, hey, this is not working. All right, so there we go. That is our rocket explosion, and that looks pretty good. All right, I'm not going to keep this hard. I'll keep it there for now. We're not going to use it. We're going to replace this, I think, in the next episode with something better, something like I don't know, something better. A couple things we might want to do. Let's actually change our rocket explosion. Let's change this for now. Let's put our rocket explosion on a little better layer. Can I change the layer on here? Maybe I can't. Maybe I can't change the layer on here, but that's cool. That's cool. All right, guys, so that's going to be it for now. Oh, yeah, default layer right here. No, that's fine. I want it like that. That's fine, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That's pretty much all I want to do for this episode. I think we're at about the time we want to be, so I'm going to end it right there. In the next episode, guys, we're going to start talking about enemies. All right, we're going to start with our initial obstacles. All right, guys. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know with a thumbs up. If you didn't, a thumbs down is perfectly fine. It lets me know what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. All right. Let me know if you have any questions. Ask them down below. I look forward to helping you out. All right, everybody. Thumbs up, thumbs down, comments down below. And if you haven't done so, please take a few seconds to subscribe. Have yourselves a wonderful day, everyone.